Hey folks, John here from A is for Alcoholic again. Today's conversation is with Chris Marshall, founder of Sands Bar in Austin, Texas. Sands Bar is a bar that doesn't serve any alcohol. Crazy, right? It's a place where people can come and hang out and get all kinds of mixed drinks alcohol-free. And we got to sit down and talk about his history with alcohol, his future, his present, and all of the things in between, and just how Sands Bar is filling this need that we find as alcoholics to fit in, to be a part of a group, to have a place to go. You know, I think a lot of times we always feel like we're losing our social scene when we quit drinking. And although there are certain places I can't go anymore, I don't want to go anymore. Sands Bar is a place where you can go and congregate without the pressures of alcohol. So, without further ado, here is my conversation with Chris Marshall. First, thank you for doing this, Chris. I appreciate it. And I always like to start, I'm always curious about what people's first experience with alcohol is, if it was something that they grew up with, if it was something later in life, you know, not necessarily your first drunk, but sometimes it's a family member and that kind of thing, and how your relationship with alcohol has evolved and brought you to where you're at today.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. I'm so glad to be here. That's a great first question, honestly. I think that it's easy to go to, like, the easy answer is your first drunk, but alcohol was always in the background of my life. When I was 5 years old, I was picked up by my aunt at I guess kindergarten, and immediately noticed that a bottle had rolled from underneath her seat. And my family doesn't drink. They still don't drink for the most part. And so this bottle at 5, 6 years old rolls out and immediately catches my eye. I know that something about the bottle is wrong or out of place. And I take it upon myself to memorize because I probably can't read at this point or read well. My daughter's 6, so I can imagine she would do the same thing. She reads the words that she can remember. And I remember going home to my mom and saying, "Mom, my aunt picked me up today, and there was a bottle of beer in her car." And my mom said, "What? Like, that's not like my sister. We would never, we don't drink. Like, Chris, are you sure?" I said, "Mom, I'm sure. I saw this beer in the car." And I just now I'm like recalling just how frantically I felt about this and how I had proof that it was beer. And I said, "Mom, I even remember the name of the beer. It said ROOT. And my mom laughed like you're laughing. And she's like, "No, baby, root beer is not beer. That's an A&W. That's not the same thing." But for me to have that experience indicates that I already knew that beer was not good, or beer wasn't. That story says a lot about my pre-knowledge. You know, prior to ever consuming it myself, I had some kind of understanding and relationship with alcohol. And I don't know where that began for me, but I kind of started off life with that understanding that beer equals bad. Beer is something that we don't do in this house. Alcohol is something that we don't do in this house. And I made a kind of pact with myself at an early age that I was not going to drink, smoke, do drugs, or have sex until I was 18, because I figured those were adult things. And only adults did those things. Spoiler alert, all of that happened before I turned 18. But I had it in my mind at a very early age that alcohol was not something that I should have in my life.
Right.
So yeah, that's the earliest kind of memory and relationship I had with alcohol.
And this was something that your parents or your family had, they discussed this that this was, or at least it was discussed within the house, maybe not directly to you, that alcohol was a bad thing and we don't have that in the house.
Yeah, I think that my dad's father was a pretty heavy drinker, and may have been an alcoholic. And I could see that being where I learned that from, that that was an undesirable trait. I could see that being kind of the message early on. Uh, I mean, it was before, like, say no to drugs, so it had to happen through me observing conversations, situations, and just realizing that this is something that was not okay in my little world.
Hmm. So you make that pact with yourself, and this is at a very young age. How long before that pact gets broken, or do you decide, or is it a conscious decision? Like, I'm gonna drink, I'm gonna smoke. Is it, what brought you to that point? What age was that the pact was broken?
So the pact was broken at 16.
Hmm.
Um, and it was a serious period of deliberation in my life. I mean, as much as a 16-year-old can deliberate and evaluate consequences in their life, um, I was the story of my through line in all my life is that I was the outside looking in kid. I was always different. I always felt like I didn't belong. Um, Before, so we'll kind of fill it in a little bit between 5 and 16.
Okay.
When I was 5, my father was diagnosed with schizophrenia. My parents divorced, and immediately I felt different than everyone else. I felt like I did not belong in a school full of kids who had both of their parents. I just always just I never felt like I belonged. And then we moved from East Texas, where I was born, to Houston. My mom was a single parent and didn't feel like I belonged in any circle there in Houston. Oftentimes I was, one of a handful of kids of color, sometimes the only kid of color in situations, and that made me feel different. And so the choice to break the pact I made with myself was based on that need to be a part of and that need to belong. I had fallen in with a group of guys, and they were, I mean, it was great. It was just a special group of guys that, just your buddies that you grow up with. And
Yeah.
like, we hung out at each other's houses, we played basketball together. And then that around 15, 16, they started to experiment with alcohol. And I just didn't want to be left out. And so I clearly remember that very first time, because that was a conscious decision to drink.
Hmm.
So the first time I drank, and I think that this is something that's very specific to people that have had struggles with alcohol. I can't remember what it was like the first time I voted, or the first time I got behind the wheel of a car, but I know in great detail what happened. And so my first drink is a very clear memory. I was 16. I lived in Sugar Land, Texas, which is just outside of Houston. And it was a hot July day, not unlike it is today here in Austin, Texas. We had made friends with this lady who worked at Chili's, and she, was just, now that I think about it, kind of weird that this older woman would be hanging out with these teenage kids. But, like, she was cool. She was a cool older, probably in her older meaning like mid-20s.
Hmm.
And she, like, was nice and cool to us. And we convinced her to buy us beer one day. And so she kept it in her trunk of her car outside in the Texas heat. And when she gave it to us, it was burning our hands. It was so hot. It was so hot. But we walked out into this remote field, like dead grass all around us, hot sun overhead, and we open up this 12 pack of Shiner beer,
Hmm.
and I remember looking at the bottle, and I just was holding it in my hand and looking at it and thinking, this is a bad idea. I mean, like every sensor was saying, this is not good, Chris. Like from 5 years old, you've known that alcohol is not good. Now you're about to do this. But then I looked at all my other friends, and they were already, opening up their beers. And so I opened up mine and I had that first sip. And the first thought I had was, this is disgusting. The second thought I had was, this is awesome. And look how connected we are. Look how I am one of the boys now.
Yeah. 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 I feel I had a very similar experience. And it wasn't too far off from that. I think it was, my friend's mom's, his parents didn't really drink, but they always had booze in the house. I don't know, for company or something. And so I just have this memory of the Jack Daniels and then filling it up with iced tea because we thought somehow that was going to be, but then you're diluting the Jack Daniels. Like there was no thought process to this, right? It was just anyhow. So, but yeah, a very similar thing where you're like, yeah, we're connected. This is great. And just that it's so vivid, the memory and everything building up to it and everything that happened during it,
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing. And you're right. I don't remember the first time I drove a car or voted. But that alcohol is like pow, like that. It just, it fires off in your brain, and I feel like it literally, and rewires it from the very beginning. Right.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So were you on your way, 16, ready to go, drinking every weekend? Was it then just a regular thing, or did it take some
So
time to
that
get
was
into
the
that?
first time I drank. The
Okay.
second time I drank, I decided to throw a party at my mom's house while she was gone, mix tequila and chocolate milk, and decide
Mm.
to wreck my mother's car, and ended up in jail. The second time I ever drank in my life, that was my second experimentation with alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow.
I started off drinking just problematically from the start.
Wow.
Like there was
Tequila and
never a
chocolate milk.
good, yeah. That just shows you uh being 16 and like you're still a kid and chocolate milk is available, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you have chocolate milk in your house, but you're doing this very dangerous adult thing like drinking, and mixing the two together was an awful idea. But it just, I just remember every time I drank, uh, right out of the gate, I
Mm-hmm.
always had these huge problems, and they always caused me social embarrassment.
Mm.
The very thing that I was trying to do was become socially acceptable, but then every single time I would fall over and I broke someone's, like, someone had something from like Estonia, like something like really like rare and beautiful. I broke it. Like
Yeah.
I would do things like I would just throw up on myself, show up to baseball games drunk, trying to, I just was never good at it. I was never good at it. Yeah. So
And isn't that funny that we always talk about, I used to, I would say this and be like, well, I used to be really good at drinking, I was a professional drinker, and then I look back on it now and I'm going, I was never good at it. I had
no.
maybe had a high tolerance, and there might have been that first like hour or two maybe where I held it together, but there was never any proficiency. It was it was exactly what you said. That I love that here I am trying to be accepted, and I continue to embarrass myself in front of the people that I'm hoping to be accepted by.
Hmm.
And it's so true, man. It's so true.
Yeah.
That's a great point. Um and so this is something that continues, I assume, well into your 20s.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't technically graduate high school.
Mhm.
Um, I had to finish high school and summer school because I drank while I was at school in high school. I was the editor of my newspaper and I was churning out like great work, but that was the only thing I was doing. I wasn't doing anything else. I think that just kind of underscores that I really just had my priorities all mixed up. And I liked the adulation that I got from writing, and I got praise for that, and I was okay at it. And I focused on that rather than doing what I needed to do to get out of high school. So yeah, the pattern continues in college. I joined a fraternity, and for a lot of people that would have been just a regular partying experience. But for me, I was not in it for the partying. I mean, yes, I drank and loved the
Mm-hmm.
parties, but for me, it was so much more about being a part of something.
Yeah.
Like that was the thing for me, was that I was a part of this community, this brotherhood, air quotes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I didn't have to worry if I was going to get invited to parties, because I was part of the people that threw parties. Like that to me was so much more important than it was to probably most of those guys.
Mm-hmm.
But it mattered a great deal to me.
And so you found this connection, this fraternity, this group of people that I assume that you connect with and feel good about, and it's not just the partying. Um, does that help? Does that help with the drinking? Does the drinking slow down, or do you feel like you're actually connected, or is it still fueled by the alcohol?
Yeah, I think it it accelerated the rate at which I was drinking, for sure.
Yeah.
Um, because I was drinking for two reasons now. I was drinking to be social, but then I was also still drinking to self-medicate that feeling of isolation and loneliness, which at that point became anxiety. It became social anxiety. Um, I was always a nervous, anxious kid, but once I started drinking in a fraternity, I had to not only drink during the party, I also found myself drinking after the party. And I was the pledge that would uh, hand out Jello shots, at just before the party was about to kick off, drink with everyone while the party was wild and crazy. But then at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm walking around picking up empties or half, empty beer, drinking mixed drinks with cigarette butts in them. Like I was not, I was drinking for another reason, and it was obvious. Like people in my fraternity were like, "Man, you sure do drink a lot." You know,
Yeah, I
uh,
do. Yes.
yeah. And people just said that, like, you're not okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, I'm hearing my own self about this thing where like everyone else goes to bed and I'm still going and I'm still going and looking for anything and everything that I can get my hands on, and realizing, not realizing, but that I'm just trying to feed my own addiction. Like it's no longer, there's nobody to be social with, right? You're just wandering around by yourself after everyone's done, continuing to, and yes, I have a very vivid memory of swallowing a cigarette butt. And it's I remember the apartment, I remember the town, I remember, it's like, oh my goodness. Um and were you going to college for writing as well? Was that part of the program, or?
I wanted to go to school for journalism. I really
Mhm.
wanted to be a journalist. Um, but the program, I went to the University of Texas at San Antonio, and that was not an option. So I just picked
Mhm.
communications, but it
Mhm.
didn't matter. I mean, I wasn't going to class. I could have, made, chosen, physics or something. It wouldn't matter. I wasn't going to school. I wasn't in school to get an education. I was in school to continue finding connection and to continue this downward spiral.
Yeah.
I knew from really the first time I sat in that jail cell at 16, I knew that alcohol was a problem for me. And I knew that going to college would extend my drinking career a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It would help me to mask my drinking and to make it socially acceptable, except it didn't. It was still more than other people were drinking. It was still ending in the same kind of embarrassments and the same kind of humiliation, the same kind of harm to myself. That college was not going to fix, and nothing could fix what was inside of me.
Right. Was there any more, run-ins with the law or anything like that in that time?
Yeah. So, I mean, of course, just a slew of like MIPs, minor in possession.
Mm-hmm.
I got another DUI just before I was going to turn 21. In the state of Texas, there's a DUI and a DWI, and a DWI, that's the big one. But as
Okay.
a minor, you can get a DUI, and I was fortunate enough to get that while I was still under 21. But same scenario, just wanted to be part of a party. I didn't even own a car. I was driving my friend's car, but I wanted to go to this party. And so I just drove across campus, and apparently not very well. And I got pulled over, and same thing continued. So it was a pattern for me, and one that, again, that I wasn't proud of. I knew that this was not something that I should be doing, and yet I found myself drinking over and over again.
And so how long does this go on for? I mean, at this point, you're saying you're 21, 22, you graduate college? You don't.
No,
Okay.
not that time. No,
Okay.
I was barely lucky to escape San Antonio with my life.
Mm.
I was 22 when my mom and she just I don't even know the right word for it. I was gonna say she stole me back, but she like literally just evacuated me. That's where she evacuated me from. Yeah, rescued me from my own just torment in San Antonio. I had dropped out of school. I was drinking every day. I was working at Subway, and I was paying for my liquor in bottles and sandwiches. And so I would give the guy a foot-long sandwich, and he'd give me a bottle of, Stolichnaya or whatever the cheap vodka was. And that was my life. And I had really went into more depression. I really started to just spiral out. I started cutting myself, just suicide attempts. I mean, it got really, really dark. And so my mom, rescue is the right word. She literally rescued me from that place that I was at in San Antonio. I moved back to Houston to be with her and went to my first rehab at 22.
What was that like? Were you ready? Were you kicking and screaming?
I remember, going to rehab the first time and thinking to myself, I don't belong here. I'm 22 years old at the time. All these people have way more extensive drinking and drug use. This is not for me, guys. Like, I do need the detox because I can't get out of bed until I have a drink of alcohol. I am already kind of having the tremens early in the mornings. I'm already drinking mouthwash and cologne to stay drunk and stay intoxicated. But this is not for me. My drinking, right, as bad as all those things I just told you were, cologne and mouthwash, still not as bad as someone who does coke or does meth. Like, I'm not that bad. So I went through detox and I signed myself out, and I told the counselor that this is a waste of my time and your time, and I will not be back to rehab. I promise you I will stay sober. And the guy's like, you're not going to stay sober. And I was like, you know what?
I'm going to call you in 30 days and I'm going to say, this is Chris. I'm still sober. And I'm going to hang up the phone. And 30 days later, this is Chris. I'm still sober. End of the call. 60 days. This is Chris. I'm still sober. And I just hung up the phone. 90 days. And it was around day 93. That game got really old. I was doing it just to prove to this person that I could stay sober. And I was miserable. I mean, as I'm describing, car accidents and jail and all this other stuff, that 90 something days, maybe 97 days that I was just white knuckling it was the most excruciating pain, emotional pain I've ever felt. It was horrible because I wanted to drink so badly. I would just crave it. And more importantly, I craved being with other people. I craved going out to the bar. And part of my thinking was, I will never be able to have a drink at my wedding. I'll never be able to watch football with the boys. My fraternity brothers are all going to, Colorado, and let's go to Mexico and party. And they're now adults, or at least out of college. And I can't do any of that because I can't drink anymore. And so I made the decision. I wrote my mom a letter. I would kill to find this letter. I need to ask her because she saved almost everything that I wrote. But I wrote her a letter. I said, Mom, I've given it a lot of thought and I'm going back to drinking, but I'm only going to drink beer. I'm not going to drink any liquor. And went downstairs, went to the Texaco and got a 6-pack of beer. And that was a run that lasted a couple of weeks. But my drinking was already so bad that I just could not have gone on drinking anymore. Mm-hmm. I picked up right where I left off. That whole no beer thing lasted about 6 hours.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So you write the letter. You don't wait for a response. You just write the letter and then go get the 6-pack. You're like, I'm just letting you know what's going on, the decisions I'm making. I've thought about it. I mean, a lot of people don't give it that much thought. A lot of people don't put that much, that notion of like, okay, I've just resigned myself to this is how it's going to be. And how long does that last? Are you happy after you had, does your mood change, or did you have that moment of like, okay, I'm back and it feels good? Or was it, I'm back and it feels terrible?
Right. None of the things that I had hoped to accomplish or the things I was hoping to feel again came back when I took those first couple of drinks. Yeah. I was hoping to feel grown up and feeling like, these last couple of months of sobriety had been good for me. And I was going to 12-step meetings and I could go into those meetings and prove to these people that I didn't need this. And that's what I had hoped. I had hoped that was the reality for me. And the truth is that as soon as I took that first drink again, it all went out the window. All those hopes, all that went out the window because I could see into the future and I knew that this was going to be the same kind of pain that I was feeling in San Antonio, the same kind of pain I was feeling as a kid. Like all of that is what got dredged up. None of the good stuff ever happened for me. So I drank for maybe 2 or 3 weeks. Had to go to the ER because I had alcohol poisoning. The doctor told my mom, he is probably not going to make it. You need to start preparing to bury your son because he is going to drink himself to death. I was born without an off switch in many respects, but especially when it came to alcohol, there was just no off switch. Once I put it in my body, I would not stop until I was either incapacitated or in jail. Those are the only two ways that I ever stopped drinking. And yeah, doctor said that. My mom, I think she just got done. She got done before I got done, because she had been enabling me in her own way for a very long time. And she almost loved me to death. She loved me so much that she tried to provide an apartment in San Antonio and send me money, well, while I wasn't able to like work a full-time job. She tried her best, but she decided that she was done. And so she told me, hey, you're going to die. And I've accepted that, but you're not going to die in this house. You have maybe a day. I don't know if it was even a day. You have some time to find a place to live, or you can go to rehab. Those are your two options. But I am changing the locks today. And she did. And you're out of here. And I chose rehab. And it was the best choice I've made, in my life up to that point.
And was that the final rehab?
Yeah, that was it.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to say that I had gone before that. Yeah, I think there was maybe one kind of in and out thing.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't want to stay. I wasn't going to ever stay anywhere. And that was the whole thing. Like, I just wasn't willing to stay. And the last rehab, I think there was one more in there. Or was like maybe it was a detox in there.
Mm-hmm.
But the last one was so important because it was the first time anyone had ever told me that I was self-medicating. It was the first time anyone ever said, do you think it's possible that you are drinking because you are anxious and depressed? And I knew those things to be true, but it was the first time anyone ever put words to it. And that was really important to me. And also, it was the first time I had ever been asked the question, do you feel a part of life? And this guy, his name was also Chris, he used to ask me this question, do you feel a part of? And I'm like, a part of what? He's like, a part of anything, a part of a community, a part of society. Do you feel a part of? And he couldn't have known, but that was the central question of my whole life. My whole life had been, Chris, are you a part of anything? Are you part of a family? Are you part of a group of friends? Are you part of this classroom in school? Are you part of anything? Part of this party? You do not belong, Chris. And those, you don't belong here. You're not like these people. You are different. That question completely shaped the rest of my life, honestly. And I've told that guy that, that was powerful.
Wow. That's great. I mean, I think about, there are so many things that are so similar in everything that you're saying. I didn't go to rehab, but everything up to that is anyhow, it's and are you a part of something and feeling like on the outside, and just in the way that you said it, do you feel a part of life? I don't think I've ever heard that vocalized before. And it's so absolutely true that when I was drinking, and in the darkest times, which were most of it, but I mean, if I drank for 21 years or something, probably the last 7 were dark, and I never felt a part of life. I always felt on the outside. And I think sometimes, and I don't know if you felt this way ever, but my alcoholism would trick me into thinking that was some sort of source of pride, right? Like, I'm on the outside, I don't belong. I'm on the fringe of society because that's where the rebels are. That's where the cool people are. That's where the interesting people are. And I wasn't cool or interesting or a rebel. I was usually in my bed with the bottle of vodka underneath it. At least that's how it ended,
Mm.
So I just love that idea of, are you a part of life? Not your life. And also, the other thing that struck me is this idea of doing it for somebody else, and why that doesn't work, at least not for very long. And also why it's miserable to do it for somebody else. You know, you talk about 97 days just so you could call it's out of spite. Being sober out of spite it's just not fun. You know,
It's not, and it's such an unhealthy, like, it's such an unhealthy thing when you really think about it. And I find that people of my ilk, we do things like this, right? Like on principle, we will do things. And alcohol is really good at affirming for you what you already believe.
Yeah.
So if you feel like a rebel or renegade, or look, I don't need I don't need these people. I don't need society, whatever. I'm going to be, I had this great idea of being, Kerouac and, just being like this, writer who just looked at the world through this like lens of pain and angst. And yeah, alcohol was just that friend that's like, yeah, buddy, like, I hear you. Like, alcohol was never going to tell me, no, what you're doing or thinking is wrong. It only affirmed for me what I believed, which was highly problematic. So yeah, that question changed my life.
Wow.
That group changed my life, because in the rehab, they would have these Friday night meetings with the alumni group, and he was part of that alumni group. And that alumni group, once I graduated, became my new sober social circle. It was the place that I would go, because I remember now I'm like 23 at the time. I'm 23 at this point, and I'm going to this Friday night meeting. And after the 12-step meeting, they go out to this Mexican restaurant, and the food is trash, but the feeling that I would get, the way that I had to fumble through ordering my first order of nachos, and how that was such a hard thing to do because I hadn't ordered food sober, and how we would just hang around, and the old timers would just, talk about people, in the past, and, give each other a hard time. Like, man, that became something I was looking forward to. And I remember very clearly, I was maybe 6 months sober. That same guy, Chris, asked me, so do you feel a part of? And without hesitation, I just grinned and said, yes, I do. I do. And these people didn't look like me. I was probably the youngest person there. They probably had more money than I did. They lived in a different part of Houston than I did, but that didn't matter. I felt for once like I didn't have to be anyone else but myself. And I loved that group of people. And so, yeah, I got the thing that I was looking for, was craving, since I was a kid. I was craving that connection, and I finally got it.
Yeah, there's I know there's been some studies and stuff that talk about how addiction and connection, or addiction is the opposite of connection. And it makes a lot of sense to me. I don't understand all of the science of it, but there's definitely that's what my alcoholism was seeking out. It was doing it in the worst way possible, in the most wrong way possible, but seeking out some connection, only to ruin it every single time. And it wasn't until I got sober and clear-headed enough that actual connection was available to me. And I love that you're like, well, this food is trash, but the nachos are terrible, but like, this is so great to be a part of. And it just feels that this comfort, and what it feels like to be actually accepted by another human being for just existing. And you're like, oh shit, it does exist, and I can have it. So, I mean, I think that's awesome. So you get sober. When was this? What's your sober date?
So my sober date was February 16th, 2007.
2007.
Yeah.
Wow. So you are the old timer now in the room. I mean, that's
kind of, yeah, 13 years. I mean,
13 years that's pretty good.
It's you know what, when I say it out loud, it terrifies me that it's coming out of my mouth, because I never thought I could stay sober. Anything this long, little,
Right.
anything. Sober, yeah. It is. I've been around, and I've become the kind of old timer that now says, hey, as long as you got up today, you got more sobriety, just like
Right.
I'm that guy. Because
You're
it's true.
Yeah, you've got all the cliches and all the aphorisms and the
Yeah.
sayings, and yes. There's this great, it's funny, when you talk about like those things. Have you ever seen the show Flaked on Netflix?
No.
It's Will Arnett plays a recovering alcoholic in 12-step program, and at one point they're at a meeting and something about like, yeah, that guy's got a drinking problem. Like, no, he's got a platitude problem, because the guy, one of the characters is always like spouting off all the platitudes, but they're true, right? We
They're
come to
true.
learn this. They're
Yes.
so absolutely true that's why everybody repeats them all the time. So yeah, 13 years sober. And I'm very fascinated by, I want to talk to you about Sands Bar, because as somebody who I was a bartender for, I guess, for like I don't know, 12 years
Wow.
while I was drinking, and then for like 2 or 3 after I quit.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was a trip.
I bet.
But I want to know, like, did you tend bar prior to this Sands Bar? And maybe you can talk about the incarnation and what it is and how it came to be.
Yeah. So I think my story sets up, like, so far what we've talked about sets up exactly how Sands Bar became a thing. I stayed sober that first year in Houston, moved to Austin. Because I met a girl in rehab, and was going to move here to Austin, which place I'd never visited much, to be here with her. Didn't work out. We're both still sober, by the way. And I didn't have anything else to do with my life. After we broke up, I had moved to Austin. I had no job. I was working at Subway again. And so I went to school, and went back to school, and they said, have you thought about becoming a counselor? And immediately the idea just resonated with me. I was like, a counselor, that's beautiful. That's perfect. I've gone through all this stuff. I'm about 18 months sober at this point. Yeah, let me go back to school and become a counselor. So I became a substance use counselor, and it was incredible. I loved the job. I was really good at the job. I had a knack for it, because I think about stories, and I think about, narrative, and so much of what counseling is just learning people's stories. And so I would always be genuinely fascinated, just kind of like an interviewer. Like, I'm just genuinely fascinated in what your life is, no matter who you are, because it's a story. And so I did this job, and as I was working with clients, I'm now working at kind of the county mental health authority, which is like every county has the center that they send people, right? And so if working in a private office, with a nice aesthetics in your office is like, if that is like being a chef, what I was doing was like working fast food mental health. Like, I was like, 30 clients on my caseload. I'm like, getting people in and out. I'm seeing, hundreds of people a year. In my career of 8 years, I probably had thousands of clients. So I'm able to see a large volume of people. And as I'm seeing these people cycle in and out of the mental health system, struggling with substance use, I see an emerging pattern. And the pattern is that these people go to rehab, and unlike me, they don't have that alumni group. They don't have that support network. And so they go right back to the social circle that they were hanging out with before they went to rehab. And I'm seeing this happen now, hundreds of times a month. And it's just like, how is this okay? How is this industry okay with failure? It's like, it'd be like having a car factory, owning a Tesla factory, and 90% of the Teslas. Hold on, something fell.
Okay.
Please edit that.
Okay.
It's like owning a Tesla factory, and 90% of the Teslas explode as soon as they drive off the lot.
Mm-hmm.
You would not be comfortable with that percentage of failure.
No.
But in the rehab industry, they seem to be very okay with that kind of success rate. And I was like, this is not right. This is not okay. What can we do? What can we do to make sure that treatment outcomes are so much more than what we're giving people now? What can we do beyond the clinical setting to provide a place for people to make those connections? And that is where Sandspar was born.
Aftercare.
Aftercare.
Okay.
Aftercare, but like really cool aftercare.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to go to a place if the nachos are trash. You're just not going to do it. So as you can see, so much of that is me. It is my story, right? Like, I don't know if I would have had a feeling of connection and feeling a part of things if I would have thought of Sandspar as a counselor. Mm-hmm. But it was because I had this, 20-year history with this feeling not a part of and isolation that this idea just appealed to me. And I didn't create the sober bar idea. This has been going on in Europe for, 10 plus years before I, opened Sandspar. But I knew that it would work here if we made the focus, if Sandspar made the focus on connection. Not so much the drinks. The drinks are great and the drinks are amazing. And we can talk about a little bit of that. But really, this had to be a connection-centric space.
And so Sandspar is specifically you go to spaces that are already existing. I mean, at least you did prior to everything that's going on in the world, right?
Yeah. So when I got started with Sandspar, it did start off as a pop-up.
Okay.
We were popping up around town here in Austin in whatever space we could. In May of 2018, we moved into our brick and mortar location, and we've been there ever since.
Okay.
So we have a brick
Excellent.
and mortar location.
Got it. In Austin. And then was there a time you were traveling around the country, right?
Yeah.
Because I saw stuff online of being in Seattle and a couple other places too.
Yeah. So I have no business experience and no bartending experience. So for me to own a bar made no sense. Mm-hmm. But I had this idea of just community. And as I started to kind of get a little bit of notoriety, and I got a write-up in USA Today, New York Times, NPR came down to cover our bar. Mm-hmm. And I started getting all these requests from people across the country. Oh, I wish this was in my city. Oh, I wish I lived closer to Austin. This sounds awesome. And I said, okay, well, why don't we just bring the bar to them? So in 2019, I embarked on the very first Sandspar Where You Are tour. And to my knowledge, I could be wrong, but this is the very first time in U.S. history that a sober bar has made this kind of journey. Bars usually can't tour because of liquor laws, but this bar can. So yeah, we did 9 cities in the U.S. and did a pop-up in Toronto in 2019. And then this year, we were slated to go to 15 cities and return back to Canada. And COVID hit.
Right. Yeah. I love I that's horribly unfortunate. I mean, and it's ruined a lot of things for a lot of people. And I mean, but I love this idea because I think about my perspective as a bartender when I was drinking and when I was sober. And I remember when I was drinking, and if somebody came in and they wanted something non-alcoholic, I was very dismissive. I was very judgmental. I saw them as like, why are you wasting my space if you're not going to spend money on real booze? You don't want a real drink. And then when I quit drinking, the thing that I noticed was, oh, these people are well behaved. They're here, they're here to still have a good time. There's absolutely, and why I need more well behaved people in the bar, because it's usually filled with people who are just ill behaved. And I mean, I saw so much madness and drama and sloppiness, and it would be such a relief for somebody to be like, can I just get a club soda, or can you make me, can you make me something fun, but I'm not drinking tonight? And I would jump at the chance. I'd be like, sure, yeah, I've actually got a couple of things I can make for you. And so I love this idea of being able to have a space to go and socialize like like we do, in sober spaces, which don't have to be relegated to church basements, or to the back end of community centers, or whatever it is. And so, like, this cool spot where you can go and talk to people, and it doesn't have to be, I'm sure, and I don't know, I mean, the conversation is not all just about being sober. It's just a place where I don't have to deal with other drunk people.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, and I think we've done a really good job at creating a culture at Sands Bar that is sober, but it's not recovery.
Right.
The space is sober. The space is sober. In fact, so we occupy this corner lot. So there's a row of bars, and there's a couple of bars across the street, but we're on this corner lot. It's a beautiful spot. It's an old building in East Austin. And on a busy Friday night, again, if COVID wasn't a thing, that little alley is just packed full of people trafficking in and out of the bars, right? Bar hopping. And of course, since we're the first bar on the block, people will come in. And it's amazing that almost everyone that comes in, they stop immediately because they can just feel that something's different. I've had people who are drunk, and they are not all there, but as soon as they cross that threshold, they just pause and they look around, and they'll, what is this? And we talk to people, we explain what it is, because some people do just seek us, some people seek us out, but some people don't. And you'd be surprised, or maybe you wouldn't, at how many people just stop in and they're like, this is kind of a cool space. Like, they've got some live music over there. There's some games going on over there. There's this beautiful patio outside. Let's just sit here for the night. And I've had people come in for one drink and close the bar down at 2:00 in the morning. They just love the fact that they can come here. And I've really designed the atmosphere to be conducive for connection. So our music is at a nice volume so that you can still hold a conversation. We make sure that the lighting is just so that you don't feel like the spotlight's on you, like the overhead lights aren't on. It's not last call lights, but it's still bright enough for you to make out someone's face.
Right.
Like, all of these things are things that we do so that you feel comfortable in engaging and connecting with who's ever at the bar that night.
Yeah. And I think it's great. You're just, you're describing it. And one of the things I'm so used to, especially on bar crawls, is stumbling into a place and the smell of, 1,000 stale beers in the floorboards or whatever, and being able to have like a fresh, clean space. There's a place here where I live, and I know both the owners, and it's a regular cocktail bar, and they do live music, but they took over what was an absolute dump, and they cleaned it up. And my girlfriend performed there one night, and she doesn't really like going in the bar. I mean, she doesn't drink, I don't drink, and obviously that's why we're here. but she performed one night, and she walked in and she's like, this is so beautiful, and this is so clean, and it feels so cared for, and I think that's a big difference in listening to you describe it versus a lot of the other bars I've been to, is that lighting is important, and music is important, and the ambiance is important. and that's what creates a comfortable environment for people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because if I'm creeped out and it's weird and dark, well, yeah, I guess I kind of want to get drunk so I don't have to remember that I'm here.
Right.
Right. How many bars have I been in where I'm like, oh, this place is a shithole. We should probably get drunk.
Right.
So,
I mean, and I think that's the challenge with owning a sober bar. If it's a hole in the wall, it really does not matter, because the alcohol is going to change your understanding and perception of the space.
Yeah.
So much so that you don't even care. You don't care that it's a dump. You don't care. In fact, those are some of my favorite bars when I was drinking, were the hole in the walls, right? But when you're sober, you notice your environment so much more. And so it's, doubly incumbent upon us to create the right atmosphere, even if it's, whether it be at Sands Bar or on the road when we're, touring across the country. We make sure that the space feels nice and contemporary, and it feels safe, it feels inclusive. I think because we really do make it about feeling safe. And if someone is intoxicated and they're causing a problem, they're gone, right? Like there's zero tolerance for that. If you've been drinking and you can be cool about it, I'm cool. Like I'm not here to be the arbiter of anyone else's relationship with alcohol. But I bring up that point because I feel like it says something about the way that this bar is set up for connection.
Mm-hmm.
And it's set up for people who are looking for something that is different than the traditional space.
Mm-hmm. Cool. That's awesome, man. I got a couple more questions for you. I don't want to keep you too much longer, but actually 3. Do you have any good recipes for tonic syrup? Because it's funny. I had somebody ask me if you can email me something, or I would love to. I'm sure you've got all kinds of cool drinks. You don't need to go down the list, but I'm sure there's all kinds of, you get into the syrups and the tinctures and the shrubs and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure.
So there's a lot of mixology.
There is. And that's, and I don't want to poo-poo the drinks. The drinks are a great supporting actor in our what we serve. I really do. I just don't think it's got to be the thing. And that's just kind of where I'm different than maybe even some other sober bars who just believe like the drink has to be amazing and it has to be incredible. I agree that I think it does, but I also think that it's never the main reason why people go and spend money at any place. I think it really is about changing the way that you feel, right?
Yeah.
But the atmosphere is what does that, not the alcohol, right? So in a sober bar. So we have to have a very nice atmosphere to change the way that you feel, right? To make you feel more connected, to make you feel more a part of. There are so many great products on the market, and that's what I'm a big fan of. I love to educate people on what's available, because Shirley Temple is just not the only thing that's available. That's you can do more than club soda and lime. In 2017, when I started Sands Bar, there were not many options, but now there are so many. In fact, I'm drinking hop tea, and it's just a hop brewed tea, so it tastes very hoppy. And it's got hops and let's see what kind of tea, white tea, and it's great. There's so many spirits that are there's a company called Liars that just rolled out a full spirits collection. There's Ritual Zero Proof, which has a whiskey alternative, and that is my go-to drink after a busy day on Zoom and wrangling the kids. I love to sit down with the Ritual Zero Proof whiskey neat. And it's fantastic. And I never drank whiskey as or probably I did, but I wasn't drinking it for taste when I was out there. So there are so many. I'm thinking like gin and tonics. You can do with a gin and tonic. You can use either Ritual Zero Proof gin, or there's a company called Seedlip, and they have a Garden 108, which is great with a little bit of tonic. a twist of lime, and that's a really easy, approachable drink. There's so many different things you can do.
Cool.
Really.
Cool. Okay, so I've got just a couple more questions. 13 years sober, is there still anything that you struggle with in sobriety?
I definitely think staying right-sized is something that I struggle with. As I'm growing this business and growing this brand, there is a lot of things that scare me. I'm taking these huge steps and doing things that I never thought I would be doing. I have the opportunity to just meet people that I could never dream of meeting. I mean, just it's very easy for me to say I don't belong here, or it's very easy for me to say like, oh, well, I've got this because I've got 13 years of sobriety. Staying right-sized to me means I am both. I belong where I belong, and I also need to continue to do the work. Yeah. That 13 years means nothing. I've seen people with twice as much time take another drink. And so staying right-sized is my present and I think forever struggle.
Yeah. So the last question I had is, do you have any advice for somebody newly sober about dealing with, the fear of missing out, of going to a bar, of having to completely flip over their entire social setting, or any advice at all?
I mean, to that specific situation, I would say, you can do it. I would encourage people to create their own fun. I feel like it is, and it was helpful for me to also be educated about how big alcohol has made it so that we believe alcohol equals fun. Mm-hmm. That we just believe that we need to have alcohol to have fun. And it is intentional. It is very real. It's strategic. And they've put a lot of money into creating this association with fun, relaxation, with usefulness and sophistication, and alcohol. They have a vested interest in us feeling like we are not a part of. And so you have to create your own fun. You have to create your own memories and your own magic. Alcohol is never going to be good at doing those things. So you have it within you to do. The other thing that I would recommend is that you connect with people, connect with me. I am a person that openly solicits connection. And
Where do we find you, Chris?
You can find me at Sandsbar, thesandsbar.com, or sands_bar on Instagram and Facebook, which is the easiest way to reach me is just shoot me a message on Instagram. But yeah, that's how you can reach me. But I am a person that will connect with you. That is what I do. And that's what I will always be.
Awesome. Well, Chris Marshall, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. And I hope that everything is up and running again, and that, when the time comes, if you come to the Bay Area, I would love to stop in and have a drink with you.
Yeah, we were going to be in San Francisco a couple weeks ago. According to my schedule, we were supposed to be in San Francisco. So we will definitely be back to the Bay Area. Thank you so much for this. It was a great conversation. Yeah. Really enjoyed it.
Awesome. All right, Chris, thank you so much.
All right.
Bye. Thanks again for listening. Our music, as always, is by Neglect. You can find more of his stuff at neglect.bandcamp.com.
And you can find us on all social media platforms that matter: Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And you can reach us at aisforalcoholic@gmail.com.
Talk to you later.
Yeah.